Welcome to True Terror Narrative.
Tonight, I have a rare chance to pass along some regional folklore to the world. These ancient stories are frequently disturbing, naturally, but they often conceal a warning that people would be wise to remember. Sadly, those like my mother who cannot speak English and has never touched a computer are usually the only ones who still recall them. She's seated before the tall red candle now, which means the story is about to start. I will transcribe and translate as she speaks, and I can't imagine a more fitting setting for this grim winter legend. The cabin is silent, and beyond it lie snowbanks, pine woods, and frozen peaks beneath a sky full of stars. And so, without further delay, the tale of the outsider. Long ago, this village was nothing like it is now. Everyone had a role to fill. There were butchers and bakers and makers of candles, blacksmiths, shopkeepers, coopers and carpenters. People relied on one another because their lives were intertwined. They understood, as a spider does, that when one thread breaks, the prey escapes, and who would choose starvation. That also meant neighbors watched one another carefully, because one person's wrongdoing stained the entire community. And that is where our story starts. One winter morning, an outsider arrived at the village. All at once, there was someone new, someone without a road. She traveled the winding road in a covered wagon, escaping danger and death. She needed aid, but villagers distrust outsiders. She had to find some way to survive until summer, when the snow would thaw and the mountain pass would open. She attempted to earn coins by playing music at the tavern, but the innkeeper sent her away. He apologized, saying the women of the village disliked how their husbands stared at the outsider. She tried laboring at looms and storehouses, but her hands were too soft, and she did not speak the village tongue. She couldn't take part in gossip, which made her dangerous. They dismissed her to dot snow gathered atop her freezing wagon. The outsider accepted the foulest work just to live. She shoveled filth, swept roads, and scrubbed homes for almost nothing. Yet it still failed to buy enough food or heat for winter. She turned to darker means, reading fortunes, selling brews, cheating at cards. And each night, village men crept to the covered wagon with a miserable handful of coins. They brushed away their tracks with pine branches to save their good names, but everyone knew what occurred inside the outsider's wagon. One man was unlike the rest. He was the butcher, and he brought food and firewood instead of money. It was unclear what he wanted. Perhaps he only sought conversation, for he too was unhappy in the village. The butcher and the outsider grew close, and they planned to leave together once the posses opened. Rumors spread swiftly through the village. The butcher's kin and friends were enraged by his plan to abandon them. How could he desert his place? The village depended on him. It could not be tolerated, and they decided the outsider was responsible. They did not know the butcher was with her the night they burned her wagon. He rushed out in his shirt sleeves to stop them, and violence followed. The butcher lay bleeding beside the blazing wreck, and the outsider fled, screaming, into the mountains and the dark. There was no shelter or food in those icy heights, and the outsider was no wilderness expert. She tried her best hollowing a branch-lined burrow to sleep in, eating roots and berries, but the berries poisoned her, and soon she understood. She would die, but she could not accept that fate. It was already clear when she saw her trembling, empty belly. The outsider carried the butcher's child. Desperate madness seized her. She climbed the crooked peak, and amid screaming winds and the total darkness of a moonless winter night, she begged any power that would listen. She offered everything and asked for only two gifts, life and revenge. Something must have heard, because both were granted. The outsider and her kin would survive, but on the far side of the cycle, the village folk desired warmth and light. The outsider and her kin would flourish in cold and shadow, The village folk aged and feared death. The outsider and her kin would grow old slowly and fear no mortal blade. The village folk hungered and thirsted. The outsider and her kin would eat only once a year, and it would be living flesh, and so it was and remains. When winter nights stretch longest, the outsider and her kin descend from frozen peaks to hunt. It is always unknown who will be taken. It could be a reckless, disobedient child who ignored his mother's call to come home before dark. Cold hands at his throat are the final thing he knows. It could be a stubborn farmer repairing a fence near the Trillan at dusk. A scream, nails clawing frozen soil, and he's gone, pulled into the shadows beneath the trees as if he never existed. Or it could be someone special, whom the outsiders have followed through many nights. The village folk are not always eaten where they fall. That would be untidy. Some are taken away for breeding, to make more of their kind. Others are hunted for sport. When finished, the icy caves preserve their meat year-round. The village has changed since the outsider arrived in a wagon. There are electric lights and steel towers, plastics, escalators, and wireless internet. The village has expanded, but the people remain the same. Pray for the outsiders. And so each year, as days shorten and nights turn cold, the village folk stay inside after sunset. They lock doors, close shutters, and light a tall red candle to remember their sin. They try not to think of those who vanish this season, because the outsiders are always near, full of life, and full of revenge. Thus ends the tale. My mother extinguishes the candle that the occupants of this cabin lit, foolishly believing it would shield them from us. We have eaten well, but we must leave now. Dawn approaches. Perhaps I will tell another story when we return to feed next year.